Welcome to Resourcevol's Guide to Growing Your Volunteer Leader Team, Part 3. The aim of this guide is to give you, an existing volunteer leader, the knowledge and confidence needed to successfully grow your volunteer leader team to help your non-profit organisation achieve its aims. In Part 1, we began by looking at some key elements which set volunteer leader roles apart from standard volunteer roles, and what skills and personal qualities are useful for volunteer leaders. We also explored how to effectively sell a leader role. In Part 2, we learnt about social style theory and how it can be used to successfully approach volunteers about becoming a leader. We also looked at organising special events and shadowing opportunities, which allow for a gradual introduction to the volunteer leader role. In this final video, Part 3, we'll see how existing volunteer leaders can make sure they have a positive influence on potential new volunteer leaders, and how to remove or reduce some common barriers to becoming a leader. It's important to be mindful that existing volunteer leaders can have a big influence on incoming leaders in all sorts of ways. Remembering a few simple do's and don'ts will help to make sure you're having a positive influence. You may have a tight-knit team, but don't let a clique intimidate incoming leaders. Be open and go easy on the in-jokes. Experienced leaders and established teams can put a lot of pressure on themselves, and by extension, incoming leaders. Remember that no individual or team is perfect. You may need someone now, but they may want to take things slowly. Don't be impatient. Accept and respect their pace. Be welcoming and friendly. Show volunteers at every session and social how happy you are to have them as part of the team. Praise, encourage, and highlight the positives and the progress they're making, either as volunteers or incoming leaders. There can be many different approaches to a role or task. Remember to be flexible. Your way or the established way is rarely mandatory or set in stone. Both volunteers and incoming volunteer leaders will make mistakes and need extra guidance for a while. Be realistic by allowing room for adjustment and gaining experience. When trying to grow your volunteer leader team, it's a good idea to identify and address any barriers which may be preventing volunteers from taking on a leader role. Here we'll take a look at some common barriers, along with suggested actions to remove or reduce them. Perceived barriers can often be resolved quickly and easily by making sure that volunteers have the right information about existing policies and processes within your organisation. Volunteers may think they need to devote more time to being a leader than is actually necessary. Making sure they have a clear understanding of your organisation's recommended time commitment for the role can help to overcome this barrier. Volunteers may also think they can't be a leader if they have limited or no access to the technology needed to complete online training, or carry out certain aspects of the leader role, such as submitting online reports. For digital inclusion purposes, your organisation should be able to provide access to any technology required for leaders to carry out their role. Make sure that all volunteers know what's available and how to request or arrange access. Volunteers may feel that they don't know how to carry out the leader role. Your organisation should provide all necessary free training to make sure that volunteer leaders know how to carry out the role safely and confidently. Make sure that volunteers are aware of the induction and training process for leaders within your organisation. Volunteers may be reluctant to take on a leader role if there are extra costs involved, such as travelling to attend leader meetings on top of normal volunteer sessions. Make sure all volunteers are aware if your organisation is able to cover expenses and how to submit a claim. Actual barriers can be more challenging to address than perceived barriers. Organisations often need to consider individual needs and circumstances and try to find a solution that works for everyone. This could involve some research, creative thinking, and compromise. For example, it's possible that some volunteers really don't have enough time to be a leader, according to your organisation's recommended time commitment for the role. However, it's likely that your organisation can be quite flexible in these circumstances, especially if they're very much in need of more leaders. Someone who's able to lead once a month instead of once a week is still better than having no one, especially if sessions may need to be cancelled otherwise. It's possible that volunteers may not have the IT skills needed to complete online training or to carry out certain aspects of the leader role. If your organisation can't offer training in this area, it's likely that your local volunteer centre or your local library can, either for free or at a very low cost. It's worth doing some research so you can point volunteers in the right direction. Alternatively, an existing volunteer leader such as yourself may be willing to buddy up with the volunteer and teach them the necessary skills as part of their induction and training for becoming a leader. Some volunteers may have disabilities which would prevent them from carrying out the leader role without adjustments. Make sure volunteers know that your organisation is committed to working with volunteers and implementing reasonable adjustments where possible to enable volunteering. Volunteers usually need or want more experience in a standard volunteer role before moving into a leader role, which may become a barrier if there are limited spaces available at volunteer sessions. In this case, your organisation may be able to reserve spaces or even introduce dedicated spaces or sessions for volunteers who are interested in becoming leaders. Make sure that volunteers are aware of these options. The aim of this guide is to give you, an existing volunteer leader, the knowledge and confidence needed to successfully grow your volunteer leader team. In this final video, part 3 of the guide, we've looked at some simple do's and don'ts to make sure that existing leaders have a positive influence on potential new leaders. Common perceived and actual barriers to becoming a volunteer leader, along with suggested actions to remove or reduce them. Make sure to review parts 1 and 2 of this guide if you need a reminder or refresher. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. For bespoke resources and consultation services, please email hello@resourcevol.com.